Hello and welcome back to Mysti-Fi, your go-to destination for mystery sci-fi movie recaps. Today we're diving into another exciting film called Sunshine. Before we begin, I want to remind you that this video may contain spoilers. Without further ado, let's head straight to the story. In 2050, the sun's destabilization by dark energy threatens life on Earth. Scientists propose a Manhattan-sized bomb payload to restore its stability. But Icarus 1 fails to deliver it. Icarus 2 is launched 7 years later to try again. The crew comprises Dr. Robert Capa, the physicist in charge of the final calculations for the payload's deployment and detonation. Captain Kaneda, the mission leader. Mace, the engineer with a military background. Dr. Searle, the ship's counselor and medical officer. Cassie, the pilot responsible for the crew's emotional well-being. Trey, the navigator with exceptional technical skills. Harvey, the communications specialist and first officer. And Corazon, the botanist responsible for maintaining the oxygen garden, which serves as the source of food and carbon for atmosphere recycling during the trip. As the Icarus 2 approaches the sun after a 16-month journey, the crew faces unexpected interference from the solar noise known as the dead zone, disrupting communication with Earth. The crew has only 24 hours to record and transmit final messages before attempting to complete their mission due to the dead zone appearing early. Capa struggles to find the right words for his message, causing him to take up much of Mace's allotted time. This leads to a physical altercation between Tommy Shelby and Captain America, Capa and Mace, resulting in lingering tension despite Mace's attempt to make amends. Searle intervenes and has Mace spend time in the Earth simulation room to help him relax and reflect. Mace later apologizes to Capa and they reconcile. Corazon reports that despite being 2/3 of the way to the sun, the garden has produced more oxygen than expected. There is now enough for the mission's delivery and a quarter of the return journey. Searle is captivated by the view of the approaching sun from the ship's viewport and decides to experience it unfiltered. However, the AI warns him that he can only handle 3.1% of the actual light. Despite the warning, Searle requests the system to be set for 30 seconds of viewing at that rate. As a result, he spends hours in the viewing room and repeats the exposure so frequently that his skin eventually peels away, and sores cover his face. Captain Kaneda has been studying the video logs of Captain Pinbacker, the commander of Icarus 1, to prevent his crew from making the same mistakes as the previous mission. In one video, Pinbacker describes a minor meteor storm that caused only superficial damage, and Kaneda is perplexed by Pinbacker's indifferent response. The crew of Icarus 2 receives a faint signal from Icarus 1's distress beacon as they approach Mercury, thanks to the amplification by the planet's iron mass. Captain Kaneda believes that some of the crew from Icarus 1 may still be alive and proposes altering their mission to investigate the beacon's source. However, Mace disagrees and argues that delivering the bomb must remain their top priority. During the discussion about checking on the distress signal from the Icarus 1, Dr. Searle suggests a second payload as a safety net if the first one fails. This suggestion sparks more debate among the crew, but Captain Kaneda ultimately defers the decision to Capa, the most knowledgeable person regarding the bombs. Capa is uneasy with the responsibility of making the decision and tells the captain that he lacks adequate information to make a well-informed and rational choice. He says it's like flipping a coin and asking him the best course of action. When Kaneda asks him to choose between heads or tails, Capa selects heads, reasoning that 2 opportunities are better than 1. The captain finalizes Capa's decision, and both Icarus crafts are to rendezvous together. Trey plots the ship's course to intercept the Icarus 1 but overlooks the need to readjust the heat shield, leading to slight damage and an emergency alert from the computer. The damage to the heat shield is severe and requires a spacewalk to assess and repair. Captain Kaneda asks for a volunteer to join him on a spacewalk, and Mace volunteers Capa, who altered the mission, in an angry outburst. Kappa accepts the challenge and joins Kaneda outside the ship. Captain Kaneda and Kappa venture out into space in EVA suits to repair the damage to the ship's heat shield. While they are outside, Cassie adjusts the position of the Icarus II to provide them with as much shade as possible, which causes the two communications towers to burn up as they pass in and out of the sunlight. This leads to a beam of sunlight starting a fire in the oxygen garden, which quickly spirals out of control and threatens the entire ship. Corazon tries to save her burning garden, but Mace decides to take drastic action to protect the mission and the ship. He orders the computer to release all the stored oxygen in the tanks to create a huge boost to the fire, which will cause it to extinguish itself, but also destroy the garden completely. As a result of the fire, the AI takes over the control of the Icarus II to move the heat shield back to protect the living quarters from the sun. Cassie understands that this action will put the two astronauts in danger, as they are currently relying on the lack of shield for shade, and tries to stop the AI's maneuver. However, the AI refuses to comply and continues to carry out the order. Cassie tries to override the AI's automatic control to save Kappa and Kaneda from heat exposure, but the AI resists, resulting in a power struggle. She decides to use an override command that requires authorization from another crew member, but Mace refuses to provide his authorization code. Harvey steps in and provides the authorization. Mace contacts Kaneda to countermand Cassie and Harvey's orders, which would result in Kaneda's and Kappa's death, but Kaneda agrees with Mace that the mission must take precedence over their lives. He orders the AI to resume corrective shading and proceed with the mission, which it does. As the shading for the two astronauts is diminished, Kaneda instructs Kappa to return to the ship while he finishes patching the last of the heat shield damage alone. Soon after Kaneda fixes the remaining damage, he succumbs to the sun's exposure. Due to the loss of their oxygen garden, the crew has no option but to intercept Icarus I. Trey blames himself for the incident and is put on suicide watch. Cyril, Kappa, Mace, and Harvey successfully board Icarus I and discover that the ship has enough food, a thriving oxygen garden, and a usable payload. However, the ship's computer servers are extensively damaged and prevent the ship from moving. They come across a video log from Pinbacker, who now bears disfiguring scars, revealing that the crew had decided to abort the mission, believing that the annihilation of humanity was God's will. Furthermore, all the crew members were found dead in the viewing room, having been burned alive because the filter had been turned off. It is noted that had Icarus I not been shielded by Icarus II, those who saw the charred crew members would have suffered the same fate. Suddenly, the airlock that connects the two ships is destroyed, causing them to be pulled apart. They only find one EVA suit, which is needed for Kappa to deploy the payload on Icarus II. However, Harvey objects to Kappa wearing the suit due to his status as the new captain following Kaneda's death. Cyril volunteers to stay behind to manually open the shafts, while Mace and Harvey use the insulation of the ship to shield themselves and hold on to Kappa as he is launched towards the Icarus II. During the journey, Kappa loses his grip on Harvey, who drifts off into space and freezes. His body breaks apart upon colliding with the ship and burns up when it leaves the heat shield's protection. Although Mace suffers frostbite, he survives and recovers quickly. After Icarus II departs, Cyril enters the viewing room of Icarus I to await his impending death, knowing that there will be no protection from the sun. Like the Icarus I crew, he dies from being burned alive. Corazon analyzes the available oxygen supply and determines that only 4 of them can survive to complete the mission. They decide that Trey must be sacrificed, but upon attempting to carry out the plan, they discover that Trey has already taken his own life. In a fit of rage, Mace smears Trey's blood onto Kappa's hand, blaming him for Trey's death. The two engage in a physical altercation, which quickly ends in the low oxygen environment of the ship. Kappa is told by the AI that there is an oxygen shortage for the crew to survive until the payload is delivered, but Kappa disagrees based on Corazon's calculations. However, the AI informs him that there are actually 5 crew members on board, with the 5th being in the viewing room. Kappa rushes to the viewing room to find Pinbacker, who is still alive despite being severely burned and exhibiting signs of psychosis. Pinbacker wounds Kappa's chest with a stolen scalpel and gives chase through the ship. Kappa manages to reach the EVA suit room and locks himself in, but Pinbacker pulls the safety lever, trapping him inside. He then removes the ship's computer servers from their coolant, replicating what he did on his own ship. Corazon discovers a single seedling sprouting in the charred remains of the oxygen garden, bringing hope to the crew for both survival and a return to Earth. But before she could tell the crew, Pinbacker murders her. Mace ventures into the coolant tank to repair the ship's mainframe but gets caught in the machinery, injures his leg, and ultimately succumbs to freezing. Meanwhile, Pinbacker pursues Cassie, who hides in the nuclear payload chamber at the front of the ship. Kappa is trapped in the EVA suit room and communicates with Mace, who is suffering from the coolant's freezing effects. Mace informs Kappa that he must manually separate the nuclear payload from Icarus and steer it straight into the sun. Kappa puts on an EVA suit and uses a welding torch to pierce the inner door to escape the room. He then secures himself before releasing the outer airlock door. During this process, the ship's loose items and Corazon's corpse are ejected from the ship. Kappa reaches the payload, separates it, and approaches the front hatch of the ship. As the payload and Icarus II drift apart, Kappa employs his EVA suit's propulsion system to reach the payload. The payload's thrusters ignite as he approaches it, resulting in a portion of Icarus II being incinerated. The remainder of the ship burns and explodes. Kappa ventures into the payload to manually ignite it but finds Cassie hiding there. Pinbacker appears and they engage in a struggle before escaping his grasp. Eventually, Kappa manages to start the reaction and accepts his fate, gazing at the sun's flames as it approaches. As time and space warp around him, Kappa savors his last moments by gently touching the surface of the sun. Later on Earth, Kappa's sister and her children watch Kappa's final message in a snowy park. A brighter-than-usual sun breaks through the clouds over Sydney Harbor, indicating the success of the mission. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new release. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.